Started, yeah. So yeah, welcome everybody to this little session of the Indie Games Europe chapter. My name's Ed, and I'm pleased to introduce Greg Kowal, who is CEO at Fabula.ai, and he's on the cutting edge of what people can do with AI tools. So can I please get a round of colorful emojis from the chat to welcome him? So yeah, we're expecting about 50 minutes or maybe a little bit more for the talk, and we figured that we could do a Q&A session at the end. But feel free to write your questions in the chat, and then Greg can get to them, when he's ready. Also, just a reminder, this talk is recorded, if you're okay with that. So please keep your mic muted when you aren't speaking, and keep it family friendly for YouTube. Thanks very much, and I'll hand over to Greg. Thanks very much, and yeah, let's have a great chat.
Okay, so thanks, Ed. So this is a second revision of the class that we already had. So if someone had seen the first class that we had, it's different because it's upgraded, but there will be overlap. Yeah, so there is like we talk about the same things. So I think there is two things you can again, go through it with us again and establish better understanding. But I've also added a lot of knowledge here, and I've upgraded it with what happened since. So let's get started. Yeah, so it's intended for the general goal of the presentation is to provide you with the tools and basic understanding to apply AI in your gaming projects. Yeah. So as Ed mentioned, I'm the founder of Fabula.ai. I previously worked with, my general background is mostly in IT. So I worked in AI, robotics, IT solution projects for companies like Ocado and other larger companies in Europe. And AI, we started applying AI in gaming very, very early at the start of 2022. So we kind of are in this generative AI journey from very start, where the seed was planted and first models were being released, and when the things were very, very simple. And then as things were being advancing, we were learning the technology, but we also had this understanding and knowledge from this classical AI, so we could compare it and apply it to what is happening. Yeah. So there are a number of reasons why you would want to implement Gen AI for the game development. The first, obviously, is to improve the workflow and make your process of making games easier, or process of creating content for games easier. The other main, not typically mentioned thing is that you can actually leverage generative AI to build novel features and add features to the runtime that are very unique, and you could then have the products that then can compete on this red ocean market with something that is very, very unique. And the third reason to actually learn this generative AI is that we should prepare for the job market of the future and develop skills. Yeah, so we can either ignore it and say that OpenAI won't change anything, but the truth is that it's a revolution that will probably impact all of the jobs. So OpenAI, with yesterday's release, probably killed multiple startups, and the same happens to the jobs. Yeah, and this will continue. So by learning AI, generative AI, you can actually equip yourself with the skill set that will make you more competitive on the job market. Yeah. So now the landscape of AI at the moment is dominated by thousands of closed source projects. Yeah. And those projects provide very unique values, very unique USPs. But the history of AI does not originate from commercial projects. It's actually, this history of AI is researchers and scientists working together on publishing different research papers, features, technologies, exchanging it with others. So others will take them, develop them further, build products with them, and share the knowledge. Yeah. And this when you don't see it so much in other spaces, actually in AI, this culture still persists. Yeah. And every day, literally, you have tens of projects being released, very unique projects that can be applied in your game making processes to really build very unique and innovative stuff. Yeah. So if you become expert in commercial AI, you will typically end up being a prompter. Yeah. So there are some features, but the way of understanding the technology is limited. And this is very important. It's not like because prompting is in general important and this basic usage of tools. But if you decide on to learning open source projects, this what researchers and scientists are publishing and what community is creating, you are actually will get to the level where you kind of become AI engineer or AI worker. And so it's good to understand all of these commercial tools, how to use ChatGPT, how to use Leonardo AI. But once you step into open source software, you will actually build the level of knowledge that machine learning engineers are using. And actually, internally, we have machine learning engineers, and they're actually using also those tools here. And the good news is that learning those tools is not as difficult. It's probably much harder to learn programming than actually learning how to leverage generative AI in your workflow. Yeah. So typically, when people think of generative AI, like if they haven't got deep into technology, they imagine mid-journey prompting. Yeah. So, and there was this idea initially, that the prompt engineers, that's the future. It will be dominated by the market, etc. But from our perspective, like Fabless AI perspective, generative AI looks more like this. So you have multiple different tools where you build different pipelines. Those tools specialize at different things. You need to understand how to apply them and for what use cases. And typically building some of the workflows can take you from days to weeks. And it's not a prompt. Yeah. So prompt is a part of this. So like in this situation, you have some prompts and you need to know how to do it, but this is not generative AI from our perspective. So now, another reason why you would want to focus on open source projects is that when initially closed projects seem cheap, if you want to apply it to the games at scale, especially when you apply some features in runtime, this gets very expensive. And let me visualize this. Yeah. So if you take one single high-end GPU, that GPU, like very expensive GPU, will have generation capacity of around 31 million images a month. So if you get that GPU and set it right and will be generating constantly for a month, you will generate approximately 31 million images. And that, by leveraging open source, it will cost you up to $3,500 a month. Then if we will replicate the same volume on DALL-E 3, the cost will be over $2 million. So I suspect that no indie development studio has such budget. Yeah. So now if you have a product that where you would like to apply AI, probably closed source will get very, very expensive. Yeah, at some point. Yeah. Obviously, this is today. Things can change. Yeah. And now another thing about the open source projects is that open source can empower you to do novel features earlier. And if you look at the landscape, especially if you are observing open source, there is like multiple, if not tens or hundreds of startups that are first to market in terms of wrapping some features being published by researchers or scientists, wrapping into a business and releasing it. Yeah. So often this open source research is ahead of the game because some company can grab it, release stuff. An example of such company is Kera AI. So Kera AI released their product several weeks after research with the code was published that could do really fast generations. and they were first with this product, and everyone appreciated and saying like, oh wow, how amazing they are. Maybe they had this internally, but coincidence was that there was actually such features being published for free with commercial license several weeks earlier, and their MVP was very simple, utilizing very similar technology. Yeah. So, and in most of the cases, open source, because it's open source, will enable you to have much greater control over what you do. So like Midjourney is lagging with the features that were available in open source for very, very long time, yeah. So we'll start from like art generation. It's called latent diffusion models. And the first thing that we want to have answer to it, what is a model? Yeah. So initially when I was first with AI, I could not understand model. What is that? Yeah. Is that like, some brain in the team, whatever? And the answer is very simple. Model is just a file. And that file is associated with few lines of code with them in the most basic form is so-called inference. And that few lines of code can be application that takes a model. And then if you put it on your computer without any internet and you have good enough GPU, you will be able to be on the airplane, keep generating images, keep generating text like ChatGPT like from your computer, and you will just pay for the electricity, nothing else. Now, where such models come from? So typically to create first instance of the model, you will need to have a lot of data. So like you take 10 terabytes of data, then you need to have infrastructure of thousands of GPUs. Then you will run that data set with some training code on that GPUs. You will pay a lot for electricity, like $3 million, $1 million. And then you will get a foundational model, so-called optimized parameters. Now, in this models learning curve, such foundational model, if we will compare this to a human, it's more like a person that is in high school, has a general knowledge. And the good news is that such foundational models exist for 99% of the cases. And it's not just in art generation, it's actually more in statistics, it's in text generation. You probably will never need to worry about the foundational models. Yeah. And then if we take this, our human from high school, he goes to university, and then in university, he gets more specialized knowledge. And this is so-called, let's say, fine-tuning process, where you take these expensive large models and you train them further to be experts in something. And typically, training such model is not that expensive. You will probably pay $300 if you are very inexperienced and you keep failing. It can cost you even like $10 to fine-tune such model. But also such models exist for probably 50% of the use cases that you have. You can find ready models created by scientists, researchers, or great community, because of this culture of collaboration. And then the third phase of such model is to have some task-specific knowledge or tools that enable you to do very specific things with those models, and all of that tools are free, really. So you don't need to worry about paying for them. Yeah. So now there is number of hundreds probably of foundational art models, these high school models, these first phase models, but I've shortlisted 3 that you should worry about. There are more, but if you know those 3, that's probably enough for the start. Yeah. So there is Stable Diffusion 1.5, there is Stable Diffusion XL, and there's a Playground V2 model, and there is no kind of like best choice. Yeah. So they're all different, all better at other things. So they generate a different resolution. This resolution is important because if you try to generate in different resolution, you will face problems. But it doesn't mean that Stable Diffusion 1.5 is worse than SDXL, because you can use different techniques to enhance it. Yeah. Stable Diffusion 1.5 less responsive. Let's say on Playground V2 has best responsiveness, so prompt understanding. Stable Diffusion has lower quality, SDXL has higher quality, same Playground V. 1.5 is easy to train, SDXL is harder to train. In 1.5, you should use keywords if SDXL program usually use sentences, more like human speaks, yeah? And they have different hardware requirements, yeah? So when you start, you should probably almost always start with Stable Diffusion 1.5, because this model, when it seems that has benchmarks are not the best, you can actually leverage this job specific, this first phase tools to make it as good as SDXL. But it still requires has lower hardware requirements, and it's much easier to train later, yeah. And then people take these foundational models, community takes them, mainly community, but also researchers, and they create enhanced implementations, yeah. So there's like SD 1.5 hyper model that is based on Stable Diffusion 1.5, and this model really does what Kera AI is doing. It used accelerated techniques to generate stuff really fast. So like in one step generation, so like it takes half second to generate things with SD 1.5 hyper. We have Proteus model that has enhanced prompt understanding, yeah, that is some better than Midjourney, but has a little bit worse style capabilities, yeah. There is SDXL DPO that was created by one of the universities, and that model was tuned. And there is not best model that you could use. They're all different. So you should experiment with them and find the one that works best for you, for your specific use case. Then in Faber AI, we also created, like we fine-tune SDXL to achieve, we have multiple models, but this model is focused on generating characters. We trained it to follow our internal prompt structure so we can later leverage LLMs to generate stuff with them. And this is an example of us taking SDXL model and making it be kind of specialized in actually characters generation. And then it's also what it's pending. It's still pending open source release because it's available via API. It's Stable Diffusion free. That has a new architecture. And again, you're going to have 1.5 SDXL, and then you're going to have Stable Diffusion free. And this early testers say that this model is kind of like an end game. Yeah? So it's going to have the highest quality, has top level prompt understanding, can do text really well. And probably this will be the last platform we need in the future. So now, in this learning curve, we know where the high school knowledge comes from in the models. So there are companies creating foundation community, tuning those models further that you can take them, but where this specialist knowledge comes from, yeah. So you could train the models further to be very specialized at things, but general in the community, what you do is you use LoRa to achieve those tasks. And what LoRa is again a file. It's like a smaller model, really smaller model, that tells the main model what something should look like in terms of style or other level of knowledge, such as, you could train it for object style or art style, or actually to fix some certain problems in your generations, yeah. And then you use that model with the base model, such as SD 1.5, and you can get very precise generation of cars. And this is an example for Badass Cars LoRa that was created by community. And now, where do we take those models from? How can we locate the models? So first thing is that you could train those models yourself by using different tools, such as Koya SS, but you should probably avoid training models initially, because you can leverage what community created. And there is this site called Civic AI that has thousands of quality LoRa, Stable Diffusion models, different training manuals where you can actually take from community. And 95% of those models have commercial free license to use. So you don't need to worry about that yet. And then the third place where you can find models is Hugging Face, but typically those base foundational models will be there. But Hugging Face is a starting place for LLMs. So you're not going to find text models on Civic AI, but you're going to find them on Hugging Face. We'll talk about this later. Now, if you go to Civic AI, one of the things to notice that if you go to any model page created by the community, they will tell you what the base model was used, so this high school model, to create that model. And this is important because most of the tools these are platforms here. So if you have tools, those tools are compatible with the platform. So there can be, let's say, Ella extension that works only with 1.5, won't work with SDXL. So the choice of a platform is important here. Then there are different LoRa's available, such as you can find LoRa that will do pixel art. You can find LoRa that will actually generate textures for you. You can find LoRa that will specialize in vector illustration, or some full checkpoints, fully trained models that are trained to do particular style. And we also, in our process, we also utilize LoRa's. So here's the example, same model that I showed you previously, but it utilizes different LoRa's to control the style. And then what we have same prompt, we just change the LoRa, and we have different art style. So as you can see, this character kind of is the same character in different art style. So also in CVT AI, what you will get is you get a gallery of what community created with the same time LoRa's or models. So you can get very good kind of initial impression whether this model is something that you are looking for. Yeah, because if community couldn't generate anything meaningful, you probably won't be able also. Yeah. Now, if you look again at our learning curve, we know where the specialized models, where we can get them on CVT, Hugging Face, and we could train them. And now there are these job-specific tools. Yeah, how do we really control the AI to do what we want? Yeah, and the problem, like the challenge with the tools is, and here's where this AI engineer worker comes from, that there is a lot of them. And by a lot, I mean that there is like 10 new tools typically, or 5 new tools released every day. And some of the tools overlap, they even do the same, but they're better at different things. And now the person that specializes in really AI will have a very good understanding of what those different tools do, and will be able to select the tools or test workflows, build workflows that utilize those tools to achieve certain business objectives, or whatever you do for your hobby project. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but we'll mention some of them so you can get a good understanding of what can be done. And now, first, and this is super exciting project, it has been released several weeks ago. It's called like Ella or Pixar. There are 2 projects that do the same. And this project, I will just revert for a second. What this project does is it equips art generation model with very small language model, and that language model does constant reprompting based on what is being generated to drive generation to what you want. And what it really does is that if you take a prompt and you run that prompt, elephant wearing butterfly wings on TV box screen, and you run it on the plain SD 1.5 model, you will get something like that. And there is no TV, so it's like a failed generation, and you typically say, okay, it doesn't work yet. But then if you build a workflow where you take SD 1.5 and you actually use Ella, this is what you get here. So then this problem where I mentioned to you that SD 1.5 has full prompt understanding can be fixed with another tool, such as Ella or PixArt. And this is like let's say, competing open source projects. We'll see which one in the end will be the best project. Yeah. Another way to control your generations, actually to train LoRa to fix specific problems. Yeah. So like when we were creating pair-based characters model, one of the things that we struggled with was to generate characters with closed eyes. So you can actually train the LoRa or find the LoRa for your particular use case that will fix this problem. And this is example, again, the base generation. And then we, instead of, like trying to reprompt, you have an AI engineer worker training closed eyes LoRa that will fix that problem once and forever for your product. Yeah. Another extensions that can be used with is literally set of extensions called ControlNet. And what ControlNet does is it takes an image, input image, then preprocessor extrapolates some information from that image, and then in combination with a prompt, ControlNet those new generation. And now those control nets come in various forms, such as the one I showed you, which is like a CANI preprocessor. You can export pose out of character. You can actually use the preprocessor that focuses on sharp edges of the generation, which is really good if you want to do like a room generation. You want to just follow the structure of the room, or where you want to have more detailed kind of line art from the image that you are using information from for generation. Yeah. And here's another example of Faber's character model where we applied open pose control net and reference control net to control the hand gestures for the character. Yeah. To regenerate him with the different hand gestures. Yeah. So another really cool project is IP adapter that can be used for style or face transfer. It works very similar as ControlNet does, but it's better at different things. So it can take input image and create different variations of that image, or you can also combine it with the prompt. You could use it for in painting to combine two concepts together. Another cool extension, which is like Reactor, which is the newer version, Roop, which is the older version. We also found that Roop works better for some certain art style, and Reactor, in general, Reactor is superior. And what this extension does, it takes one image to take face and applies that face to another image. Yeah, so it's really cool if you, let's say, would like to create some, features where when you are the character in the game. Yeah. And then another really cool project, it also can equip Stable Diffusion 1.5 with better quality, is AddTailor. And AddTailor, so this is a base generation 1.5, which is not really high quality. Eyes are off, the details are missing. But if you actually run that generation, your pattern to AddDetailer in the end, you will get something that is really high quality. Yeah. So now, another extension that can be used to, for example, detect face and only apply IP adapter to the face for some reason, because you don't want to run it through the whole image, is the SAM, which was also released by Meta or Facebook, is segment anything model. And this model can automatically detect and cut off elements based on the text input. So you can say face, you will detect the face, create a mask like in Photoshop, and you'll be able to apply your generation just to this section. And so typically when you build workflows, you don't use just one extension, you actually use multiple of them. Yeah. So like this character generation that I showed you is actually not just fine-tuned model, this is actually combination of things. Yeah. So first one is fine-tuned SDXL, we apply multiple LoRa's, we use LoRa control extension that allows us to apply LoRa at a different stage of the generation at different percentage. So you really use that LoRa only at the initial stage of generation, but then you use another LoRa and in the end you use third LoRa. Yeah, and there is many other tools or extensions that we actually use to control this. Yeah, and if you want to become an expert, you need to learn those tools. Yeah. Now, so we know more about this high school level knowledge, university level knowledge, and job specific tools. Now, how do we run it all? How do we, we talk about tools, but how do you actually run this? So there are multiple ways to run it. The good thing is that those tools typically exist if you have applications that can do this inference, these few lines of codes that were developed by people to large applications, they typically have those tools available. Yeah. And there are two solutions here. First is Stable Diffusion Web UI. It's so-called by community mainly by the name of the author, which is like Automatic 1111 or A1111. And this tool is a set of art generation related tools. It's not just prompt and generate something. You have all of these tools that I've mentioned to you. You can actually install as extensions and use them in combination with basic generation. And then there is another project, which is called Confi UI. And this project is very well maintained, very powerful, Blender-like node system or Unreal Engine like node system. And when you start your journey, you probably want to start with automatic 1111 first, but then as you progress, you should move to ComfyUI. If you feel more comfortable with technology, ComfyUI is probably what you want to start for, and I will tell you why as we go through later LLM generation or text generation. So the zero effort way to install most of the popular AI project on your local PC, you can look at the project called such as Pinocchio. When we've done this class first time, Pinocchio was in alpha phase, it's constantly being developed. And the cool thing about Pinocchio is that it also is not just about A1111 or ComfyUI, it's about multiple projects. And this Pinocchio will install all required libraries for you. If it doesn't work for some reason on your local PC, it actually state what you are missing, what's wrong. You can then Google for it and try to fix it for yourself. It will install A1111 or ComfyUI with a single click. And we actually even download these high school level models for you so that you could generate right away. Now, once you install Pinocchio, you will have access to hundreds of different projects, such as you will be able to test Whisper. Whisper is the model that can do voice to text transcription for you. You can be able to use XTTS or Open Voice, which is probably a better option now, that can do text to voice generation based on reference samples. You will be able to test stable video diffusion, can generate like a 4 seconds videos, or test Lava models. And what Lava enables you to do is open source project that enables you to talk with images. Yeah, so it's like a kind of, you know, features that are demonstrated by GPT for Omni. Yeah. And we also have stable diffusion at A1111, and we have a ComfyUI and many other cool projects. They're actually very good for knowing what's important in the space because they keep adding everything that kind of appears to be important for AI research or AI development. There's another way to install, have a zero effort install in the cloud. So you can go to RunPod. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to pay for it. It's not very expensive, but you're gonna have to pay for it because there are GPUs running for your generations. Once you go to RunPod and you start a pod, which is kind of virtual PC, you should choose the right template. Yeah, so you see the stable diffusion template or ComfyUI template. You will get a button to start the ComfyUI, and you will have an instance of ComfyUI or instance of A1111. Now, there's other services. There's like a lot of services now because the space is very competitive. So you can also go to like ComfyUI ICU to run instance of ComfyUI. You can go to runconfy.com to also start an instance. They're like a subscription base where you pay like $20 or something, and you get like Sentinel GPU power that you can utilize. I'm sure that there are also such cloud projects for A1111. I just haven't researched for it yet. And now, if you go to A1111 interface and you are in gaming, it's really like Unity-like interface, yeah. So you get a lot of sliders, you get select boxes, and it's kind of similar way of interacting with it. It's like you will be actually working in Unity, yeah. And it's probably easier to start with, yeah, because you can have some default, let's say like in the early phase is much easier, yeah. So to start it with, because if you go to ComfyUI, which is an Unreal Engine like interface, it's actually a little bit more complicated because you need to understand how art generation works in terms of where, at what step LoRa is applied, because the LoRa will be a node that you need to connect with other nodes, yeah. And now the general problem is in starting with A11 or ComfyUI is how do I start? How do I learn workflows? So one way is to obviously go to YouTube and watch tutorials. But another great way, actually what we typically do is we again go to, sorry, because I've mixed up slides, but so one more thing, I want to also to show you the Ella example of the ComfyUI workflow. So as you can see, it's not that complicated, yeah, but you need to know what nodes to use to actually enhance. So This one is the basic flow to generate with Stable Diffusion 1.5. This is Stable Diffusion 1.5 equipped with Ella. Few more nodes, and you already have this enhanced prompt understanding in Stable Diffusion 1.5. And then the starting point to learning how to actually generate the cool art is actually first is Civit AI. If you go to Civit AI, you can, for each community generated image, for most of community generated image, you can see what they've prompted and what the configuration with in A1111 was. And you can copy all of this configuration and go to the A1111 and try to replicate it. There is also OpenArt webpage, and this OpenArt webpage focuses on ComfUI workflows. And this is an example of a workflow that uses ComfUI, takes a video, and translate that video to kind of like a gaming art style. And you can actually take that workflow of this web page and drag and drop it into ComfUI and replicate it in ComfUI. You're going to have to install missing extensions, and that's probably the best way to understand a very complex workflows, because if you visit OpenArt, you will see that community created amazing things, from generating like parallax, like scenes, to generating, style transitional videos, to basic things such as, face expressions, etc. Yeah. So this is a very cool way to understand what can be done, and the actually knowledge how people achieve this is available there because all of the workflows are published. Now, we know now a lot about art generation, but let's talk about text generation because it works in combination on some level. Yeah. So same process applies what in latent diffusion models or art models applies to LLM models. We have high school models, we have specialized models, and we have job-specific tools that we can utilize here. And if we look at the foundational text models, there's a Mistral AI that produces very high-quality models that, if you use them right for specific use cases, can even outperform or perform as good as GPT-4. We have Llama 3 that has been recently released that actually performs as good as GPT-4 for certain use cases. And there are even further implementation of Llama 2 where community claims that it actually outperforms GPT-4. Because in general, those models are never good at everything. They are good at specific tasks. Yeah. So if you have a community or researcher who took Llama 3, which is like this high school model, and made it very, very good at certain task, it's just going to be better than GPT at that task. And there is also, that's today's release or yesterday's release, Falcon 2. I've listed it here because Falcon 1 release was really good. It was actually state of the art in open source at that time. It has been just released, yeah, so probably it's going to be really good. And then you also, again, people take those models, they fine tune them. So like Llama 3 model will be censored. So it's not gonna, for example, if you ask the Llama 3 model how to break into a car, won't tell you. There's a community that tuned that models to actually be uncensored in that manner, but also typically they also perform better than the base model on like accuracy and the general, like prompt understanding. So another thing is, like I'm often asked about this, you also have Llama 3 implementation of role-playing models. So if you, let's say, would like to create dating app, so you don't need to really train all of these models. You could do this. You can just go and find something that was created by community as commercial free use license. And now in terms of locating such models, it's very similar. You can train them. Probably like we are using AutoTrain Advanced for training it, but there is a version of AutoTrain available like with UI on Hugging Face that you can use. You're gonna have to pay for it. And again, training those models is not hard. Actually, building data set is hard. Training models is very easy. And you should probably start from searching for a model that someone created and publish it, because He wanted to achieve some stuff, and he shared his work. And almost all LLM models are available directly on Hugging Face. And there is thousands of models, thousands. So you can just go to the search engine, type in, role playing, and keep searching for models, test different models, and try to figure out which one works best for your use case. And in terms of generation, a very similar process applies here. You can go to Pinocchio and find tools such as text generation web UI to run such models. But there is also Comfy UI extension that you can use for text generation. It's actually called Comfy UI API tools. I'm sure there are other available. And then what you have is in this your Comfy UI workflows that you've seen for art generation, you can actually also add text generation. So, and let's say if you would like to create a process for trivia game like content generator, you will build that process in Comfy UI by using extension that I mentioned previously. So LLM generate question. Then you use LLM to generate 10 prompt ideas for art. Then you use Stable Diffusion to generate arts. You use, for example, IP adapter that we mentioned to keep consistency based on some previous concept. And then you have human review, choose, and save it, yeah? So in general, the message is that Comfy UI is not just art generation tool, is actually a suite that you can use to combine different type of models such as LLMs, voice generation, transcription, art generation, and different extensions to build very complex workflows that will fit your very individual needs. Now, also what you can do in Comfy UI is you can combine the commercial projects that we talk about, like ChatGPT or even Stable Diffusion free API, that is combined with these open source tools to achieve your business objectives. Yeah. So here's an example of extension that you can also search for, which is like ChatGPT inside Comfy UI. So instead of using Llama 3 or Mistral that I mentioned earlier, you could actually just insert API key for OpenAI and use ChatGPT directly in Comfy UI to build your workflow. Yeah. So this is it. Like our plan at the moment is, if you go through this content in this presentation and you explore those tools, the next iteration for us is to run a workshop where we're gonna work on specific use case, specific problem, solve a specific problem in those tools. Yeah. But in general, this PowerPoint will give you all of the points that you should go through YouTube search to actually achieve basic understanding and start implementing AI into your live gaming studio or whatever you don't want to do. Yeah. So thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks very much, Greg. Fantastic. Yeah, that was really excellent. I'm going to be rewatching that a few times on YouTube. As we've said a few hundred times already, please join our Discord so that we can let you know about what other events are coming up. We actually have another event already ready to let you guys know. If you hang on a second, I can just give you the link for that. It's on the 19th, so 5 days time, and it's very, very exciting. I think, here we go. And yes, we're going to have famous, it's not on AI this time, we're going to have the famous Tien Twinstra. My Dutch is terrible. Apologies to him for mispronouncing his name. But he's a famous game designer who's going to tell us some stuff about the basics of game design and some more advanced stuff as well. Let me at least get the actual title. What is it? Game design techniques that boost your bottom line. So basically how to make more through game design. So please feel free to sign up for that. Have a think about your questions. If you've got any questions, please either put them in the chat or feel free to just unmute. And there's only a few of us here, so I would say speak freely. One other thing, just a bit of housekeeping. I'm going to chuck a survey into the chat. It's not from us, it's from Google. We'd really appreciate it if you could take really just a couple of minutes to fill it in. So Google Play wants to find out a bit more information about how people are using AI tools currently. And yeah, it just takes a couple of minutes. So I'll chuck that in the chat. Please have a look at it. Thanks very much. Nice. Thanks very much, Luke. Take care. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So if you guys, as Greg said, if you guys start using these tools and get stuck, then you can come and ask us for help, and we can sort of learn these things together and keep going forward like that. So yeah, if you don't have questions, think about it, and you might have some later on.
Yeah, guys, what I think the most important thing is that it's a journey. Yeah, so people associate with AI with, like I've learned to prompt and I already, I'm at the prompt engine, and that's true. You can achieve a lot with, prompting, but if you really go into understanding all of these tools and you really experiment, build your own project, build your own pipelines, it's very kind of satisfactory to build something that works like this, especially when you combine even, text generation with art generation, you build something meaningful. And over time, you start understanding all of these different bits and pieces that combine this. And the most interesting thing for me is that we have people that kind of transitioned into using those tools. And then we have people that do like practice machine learning and actually like the experienced machine learning engineers. And actually all of that parameters that are available in ComfyUI and in Automatic 1111, it's really the difference is that the guys that have this kind of academic experience, they have a feeling what they do, but the machine learning guy will come and explain, okay, because this works in this way and this calculates things in this way, and you help him. It does not prevent person that does not understand what the samplers are in detail and don't understand math behind this to actually build amazing things. It definitely is easier if you have this supporting layer of knowledge, but I would say that it's much harder to let's say build a game from 0 to 100% than to actually learn those things. Yeah, you just have to have passion for it. Yeah, and it will take a long time, like everything that you learn, but it's more of like learning how to use Blender. Yeah, I would say on that level. Yeah, and that you understand what is available in Blender. Yeah, and you have experience in saying, okay, this does not work with SDXL, but this works with 1.5. Yeah, and then when SD3 is released, you are first to test it and say, okay, those problems were solved, so these technologies are not needed anymore. Yeah, and so
on. Thank you for the amazing presentation, Greg. Do I have time still for a question?
Yes, sure. Like, ask. Anyone who has questions, ask.
I'm more towards the UI side. So video generation is really the thing that I am striving for. Do you have any recommendation on, based on your experience, what is the best AI, if you have any?
Yeah, so I think that for video generation, I will tell you what we are watching for, yeah, and is pending release, which is you can look at story diffusion. Are you aware of this? So they've demonstrated, and story diffusion is actually implementation, like almost all of these AI tools being released are building upon previous tools. So story diffusion actually utilizes animate diff. One of the technologies animate diff, and depending on like really the use case, you can either achieve some things with animate diff. We can later connect and I can show you what we have been able to do in terms of depending on your goals. But this story diffusion project, I think this should probably address the problems, because some of the generations that they've showcased after research are kind of, like a Sora level. And even, let's say, if resolution will be low, then you could build a pipeline again in the Confi UI where you generate a movie with story diffusion, and then you use upscaler, video upscaler, whatever, to increase the resolution, etc. Yeah, so. But the video generation in general, you have this kind of state of things where you have like Pika Labs like level or Runway ML level, and then you have a Sora level generations. Yeah, so, and I would say story diffusion is something that I will be watching at. Yeah.
Thank you very much for answering my question. By the way, you had a little bit more error in your LinkedIn profile. It was longer, right?
Sorry.
In your profile picture in LinkedIn, you had your hair longer, right?
I'm not sure. Let me see. Maybe it's like wrong. No, I think I have a short hair. Let me share this with my LinkedIn on the channel with you guys.
Thank you.
I think it's not longer.
Got a question from Siddharth as well. Please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So, in short, what is the best model to train with just one image? And are there any so far? Just one image.
I think that if you want to train with one image, you should not be doing training. You should be using IP adapter, because you will achieve the same. Like to be honest, like we never done trainings with one image. I know that there are there were research papers being published about one image training, etc. So on. We never went through this route because that was not something. I would say that if you are trying to utilize one image for your generation, you should probably build, like a Confi UI workflow that utilizes IP adapter, and you get some smart configs. I would look at open art workflows that use IP adapter for different things and try to find something that works in that way. Because I think this is over engineering to try to train with one image, to be honest, yeah. Like it depending on the goal. Like I imagine that if let's say we'll be building a workflow, but again, I will not use one image here. So we could build a workflow where in our system, someone generated, character and variants, and then we'll train like embedding or LoRa out of these few images so that we could embed it in the future generations. Yeah. So that you could do it. Yeah. But still we will probably try to use several ones, because if you use one, we'll try to use other tools. There's, job specific tools to achieve this.
Additional question. Since I spend a lot of time on game development in a game engine, which is Unity. Now, Unity is not as open source as Godot. It's not. So my question is, Unity Muse?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do not have access to Unity Muse because it is paid. Now, what are the developments or advancements, and how close are we to a point where we can have generative AI as an open source model in conjunction with an open source engine, so that we have to cut down on the number of steps that we have to use to achieve generation directly in in-game engine generation? It doesn't have to be real time. But in short, what I'm asking is, all we need to do is probably open the game engine and have the plugin integrated. Because currently, to do that in Unity, for example, you need Muse, which is paid. The topic for today is open source, so I'm going to use Godot as an example instead, unless there are Unity alternatives.
So to be honest with you, this is a probably good idea, to go for Godot. But I think Godot the problem is that it's small market, so you need to get someone who is really hyped to do it for free and not expect a massive return. Especially that Godot itself generates not a massive revenue at the moment. Yeah, like it's big for individuals, but it's not like for the company. It's not very very big. Yeah. So now I know, like I can answer like in general, not in open source way. I know that Unity I've seen 2 projects that Unity does. Yeah, one project that they've showcased in San Francisco on the demo day was Play. I think it's called Playmaker. Yeah, where you have this nodes-based system in Unity. So it's like a Playmaker-like system where you prompt and it generates all of that nodes for you. And that's in Unity. And this is being developed. I think that not much resources are being put on that by Unity. And the other insights that I have is that I know that Unity, and this is more like, kind of, let's say, industry insights, they have like 700 people working on generative AI engine feature in Unity, including, like 3D generation, etc. I doubt that they will release it soon because Unity has track record of not delivering things. So maybe something has changed here, but they have projects such as, I will use some simple feature, localization. It's in preview for like 7 years, probably abandoned, never delivered. Yeah. So I don't know about this. Yeah. I could I would research for projects like this in Godot or ask on the Godot, but I haven't seen anyone working on such things. But I know people that are working on commercial, definitely on open source projects for like generative game generation engine. When I was talking to A16Z, which is this investment fund from US, the guy mentioned to me that they have stealth project that does game engine, generative game engine from zero. Like from zero, they're building it. Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of happens in that space, but it's not open source. Yeah, as far I think that the problem is that you need to have very particular skills to develop something like this. Yeah, because it's not just utilizing these models, but you need to have like probably it's a massive project. Yeah, to do. It'll be cool, like to maybe if I have time, maybe after hours we could start it up. So work on something like this. So.
Yeah, that's all on my side.
Fantastic. Any other questions from anyone else, or observations, things you didn't understand? I think we actually ended up with quite a lot of people who have some knowledge of AI tools already. Yeah, if you think of any questions later, you can always hit us up.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. It will be good, like, if you are interested to help us, like, because the problem with the sessions, what is hard is that these topics are quite difficult. So we cannot run in this session for like 5 hours and do all complex, So we are starting with something that, let's say, is a starting point. But then if you, let's say, help us to understand what's the next topic, we could build this agenda together. Yeah. And for example, focus on the specific use case. Yeah. Like building this, for example, trivia game content generation pipeline together on the call. So that's one of the ideas. I don't know whether this is useful or not. For me, it will be useful because I haven't built that, but when I was doing this PowerPoint, I realized that I could build this. So that's what I would probably do.
Awesome.
So I think we can, we are done, yeah?
Yeah, it sounds like we're done. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. Yeah, hope to see you guys again soon. Come to our event on the 19th. Cheers. Have a lovely evening.